Here now, Leanne Jones from Bell Direct. Let's start with you. What did you make of the market performance today? I guess we have a couple heavyweights, at least Fortescue Metals trading ex-dividend, but the material space in general, considering the Chinese data, didn't look too bad, did it?
Nadine, that's exactly right. It actually was one of the best performers throughout a lot of the day looking at the materials space, but coming into this afternoon's trade, we actually did see a bit of a pullback from some of those earlier gains, and I think that was a result of investors digesting some of that news that came out of China, where we did see that manufacturing read coming through a little lower than expectations. So I think investors certainly digesting that, but as you said, BC Iron as well as Fortescue were both trading ex-dividend today, so that was just something to be mindful of and sort of drag down on that materials sector a little bit. It was a little bit of a disappointing day in the end, given the fact that we did start in positive territory this morning. We were trading up about 0.5%, of course following those positive leads from overseas markets, but unfortunately we know that a lot of this week is going to be driven by economic data. It's going to be a fairly quiet week in terms of company news, so when we did see a lot of this economic data coming through around 11 a.m, we did see a gradual fall off from there. So not only the Chinese data coming out, but we also saw over here in Australia that monthly inflation read, which came through a little lower than expected, as well as that manufacturing index, which contracted as well. So all adding to that loss that we did see coming into this afternoon's trade. The best performers, as you said, being that energy sector as well as property. The worst performers, however, being that IT space as well as staples. It was a fairly quiet day in terms of volumes. We saw about $3 billion going through, but certainly reflecting, I think, a quiet day in terms of company news that came through.
Leanne, let's move on from that. Let's talk about some of the company news that was out there today. We've mentioned that there wasn't a whole lot, but we did get word that Power is to sell its WA gas assets to Empire. The market apparently liking the news. What did you make of it?
Nadine, it did seem like the market liked the news. We did see Power as well as Empire both having very strong performances today, of course with the announcement of this sale of those assets. So Empire is actually going to be buying those gas assets for about $16.3 million, and at the same time Power has actually agreed to participate in a proposed rights issue in order to increase its stake in Empire as well. So looking at the transaction that was announced, it does look like it was pretty positive for both parties, and I do think it's probably going to unlock some value for shareholders in both of these companies. Firstly, having a look at Power, they have said that the transaction will result in a bit of a restructure of some of their gas assets, which will result in sort of more efficient model in terms of their capital. So that's certainly a positive. It's going to allow them to focus on some of their successful retailing electricity businesses, so going to be focusing on a lot of its core assets. So I think that's probably a positive. I think they probably don't want to focus on a lot of the exploration and development side of it. And of course, in terms of the funding that they might receive, potentially for distribution to shareholders or potentially growth opportunities as well, although we are still waiting to hear out any more information around that. But secondly, having a look at Empire, they have sort of indicated that if this transaction does go ahead, and of course we do still know that it requires regulatory approvals and approvals from shareholders as well, they are in fact going to emerge with about 100% ownership of about 10 out of 12 of their Perth Basin permits that we know they do currently hold. They will have 100% ownership of that Red Gully gas project, and also about 80% ownership of the remaining 2 gas permits. So in terms of that, it does look very positive. They will own about more than 50% of that Perth Basin, so they'll cover quite a large area, over 12,000 square metres now. So I certainly think that looks pretty positive for shareholders and really paves the way for some further exploration for this company. So we actually saw that share price up about 14.3% in the end. It was trading much higher than that earlier. We saw Power up about 4%. So certainly was very positive in terms of both companies, and I do think, as I said, it probably unlocks some value for shareholders, and they certainly reacted pretty well to that today.
Which data point are you looking to with the most interest here at home?
Nadine, there certainly are a lot of points coming through, and as we sort of mentioned earlier, it's going to be pretty busy in terms of getting this big dump of data. So tomorrow particularly we'll be looking out for the RBA rate decision, obviously, but expecting no change really in that area. Of course, on Wednesday we have GDP data, which is really going to be the big focus over here in Australia, where we're expecting it to come through pretty soft, coming through at about 3.1% with the expectation versus about 3.5% in the previous quarter. So I think in terms of that could potentially be a bit of a market mover when we do get that news coming through. Of course, on Thursday we do have some trade balance data coming through, and of course those retail sales as well for July. So again, that will be another one we'll be looking out for, and particularly looking at those discretionary areas, so the retail stocks as well as staples we'll be keeping an eye on. And of course we also have that ECB meeting, which again will be the big one, and a lot of the focus will be on commentary coming around those stimulus measures and that potential quantitative easing measures as well. So I think that's probably going to be the main focuses on this market this week, although there is a lot of data coming out. But I do think that is going to provide probably the direction more so than sort of company news.
Yeah.